sometimes people have a trauma. I've seen it happen, and the next day their addiction starts. For most people, it's kind of gradual. It starts with experimentation or social, and then it picks up momentum and eventually goes off the cliff. And now I don't have any brakes, and I can't stop it, and now it's got me. So one way to look at this is here's normal, whatever normal is, and we have our first drink or our first joint, and we get a bump from it. Ooh, that's kind of nice. And we come back down, and then we have another, and might even get more. Wow, that kind of felt good. And I'm going to speed this up for sake of discussion. Eventually, I'm going to come up here, and then I'm going to come over here. Oh, hangover. This doesn't feel very good. And so I recover back to baseline. I'm going to speed this up even more. So then we get this thing called tolerance. And I'm using more, but I'm not getting additional effects. And my hangover is like, oh, I'm feeling crappy. And I'm getting, this is called the law of diminishing returns. 2 used to do it, doesn't do it anymore. 4 does it now. Eventually, no, it's going to take 8. 8 doesn't do it anymore. I need 10 just to get started. Long story short, it starts looking like this. And when I'm down here withdrawing, one of the main reasons I'm using is just to feel normal again. Does that make sense? And, you know, this is over time. And, you know, the old proverbial frog in the boiling water, you know, I've never done it, but I've heard if you put frog into lukewarm water and just turn up the heat very gradually, he'll stay there and he'll adjust to it until he boils to death. And kind of a graphic picture, but sometimes we're boiling and we don't even know we're boiling. And people might say, hello, David, you're getting kind of out of control. But then we have this thing that often comes with addiction. And, hey, what are you talking about? I don't have a problem. You know, nice day out, isn't it? Boy, it was hot yesterday. And let's change the subject. And I don't see that I'm starting to boil. So does this make sense? Okay. What's that? The other thing that happens, I've heard a lot of people say that the more I'm pressing the lever over here, whatever your lever is, normal everyday pleasures like Starbucks and iced tea, they start dying and going dormant, and they don't have the same bang anymore because they don't light my dopamine system up the way this does, because it's not supposed to. And it gets to the point where there's only one thing that lights me up. And that's a dangerous spot to be in, because if it's the only thing that lights me up, it's the only thing that lights me up. And the rest of life is boring. It pales in comparison. You know, I tell myself, well, life's a little better with a few on board. You know, let's do some enhancement. And what I don't see is I'm digging myself a hole. And so early in recovery, we arrest the behavior, and the brain's like, what's going on? Where is it? Because it's used to it. And that brings forth physiological withdrawal. You know, my brain starts to react. And there's physiological withdrawal, you know, nausea, trembling, shakes, hallucinations, seizures, and then there's emotional withdrawal. Back to that example I gave a few minutes ago of that kid, you know, who's doing this because of his abusive past. If he doesn't have a replacement, what's he going to do? He kind of needs it. Hence the word dependence. He's become dependent on this to cope with something that's legitimate. So, nature hates a vacuum. If my drug of choice, drinking, is helping me with anxiety, depression, trauma, shame, guilt, you name it. If it's helping me with that, and then I don't replace it, that's called white knuckling. It's like, you're just hanging on by your fingernails, and that's only going to last a certain amount of time. So we have to replace the function of it. And we'll get into that in the next hour. But we have to replace the role that it's playing and address those legitimate needs, because they're legitimate. Are these human? Are those understandable things that affect people at times? Yeah. Maybe everybody in the room. I've come close to this. There's nothing wrong with that. That's human, and we need help with it. Some of us don't automatically know what to do with that. Sometimes we weren't taught, or we didn't have role models that said, here's what you do when you're anxious, or here's some things that can help you when you got the blues. Here's some things that can help when you're feeling ashamed of yourself. We don't automatically get taught those things. And if our parents don't know how to do it, why would they teach us something they don't know? Our parents typically do the best they can. But sometimes their tool belt is lacking. Not blaming them. It just is what it is. Any questions on all of this? Okay. Let's take a break. Come on back about 5 after, about a 10-minute break, and we'll keep going.